Hello everybody, we're back with a whiteboard. Today I'd like to talk about how our lives have been disrupted, but also how I've tried to tie in the ordeal we've been through with a malignant narcissist, a psychopathic influence. How I've been able to tie that in with my ongoing work, which is to run a medical practice with a understanding of, or my understanding anyway, of a deeper consciousness, which is linked to our ethics and our morals. It's very much heart-focused. For instance, there is an understanding, certainly with indigenous cultures and modern physicists, that we're connected to a field of information, a field of consciousness. And this is something that I talked about in previous books. In fact, I just finished the book, The Human Hologram, quick plug, prior to finding myself in this very difficult situation. And in many ways my further research was somewhat put on hold while I was tied into this sort of negative, low vibration, what the Vedic seers would say, low chakra energy. So it's only now that I'm able to probably give some perspective on what we've been through. It's only now that I've been able to gain some perspective on possibly why we've gone through this, possibly what was a big hole in my knowledge and my understanding about the human condition. And certainly in my book, I don't go there as far as psychopaths are concerned. I do talk about narcissists, and in particular those who have been in a situation in their own childhood where they have been themselves restricted or bullied, and this has come out as narcissistic trait in them as adults. But I didn't talk about the more extreme psychopaths I've talked about, who seem to be born like that, with some as yet unidentified genetic mutation or anomaly causing this. And also, so far, causing them not to be helped or healed by either modern medicine, psychiatry, or, as far as we know, other healing methods. So, how does this all fit together? Here is a brief doctor-type diagram, I'm afraid, of one of the theories that I put forward within my last two books, that we exist in a field of information, a field of consciousness, and we tap into that field of consciousness when we are at our most relaxed, when we're unwinding, when we're meditating, when we're engaged in acts of creativity. And that is where we get this enhanced information from a vast information field. Because it occurs when we're meditating, it seems to be that we're more likely to knowingly access this field when our heads don't chatter, therefore when our deductive, reasoning mind isn't ticking over so much. I also explain my theory, but not just my theory, many other theories, is that we contribute to this field of consciousness ourselves through what I would say heart-centered acts of kindness, or just positive acts that we perform in our life, that in fact our lives, the meaning in our lives would seem to be that we are here to service others, to service other humans, to help nature, to help us all evolve in peace, although that may not be too obvious in our world at the moment. But that would seem to be an important aspect of why we're here. So if we receive this field of consciousness within ourselves, and the human hologram, I actually give a theory that we're actually formed upon this field of consciousness that could exist outside the pressures of our time and space. That we also contribute back into this field of consciousness through our actions and our good deeds. Now, this, I posit, is somewhat dependent on a good connection between our hearts and our heads. Also, I showed in an earlier video that the emotional areas in our brain that seem to be involved in emotional processing, the amygdala, the hippocampus, etc., are, in a healthy person, react to the suffering of others. And one can see that's another word for being empathetic. So therefore, this whole system works best when we have a good connection between our hearts and our heads, or we could say between the amygdala in our brains and the prefrontal cortex, which is the more logical, thought-provoking, moral, appreciating part. We've also explained that in extreme cases the psychopath doesn't have this system working properly at all. The focus of the psychopath is to gain some sort of kudos, some sort of advantage by promoting the suffering of others, because the psychopath doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't feel blame or shame. Feels entitled to do this, and therefore feels entitled to attack the person, both with their head and their heart. Now, we'd have to say there's no evidence that the psychopath, the malignant narcissist, has an understanding of this, and hence this condition can be seen as a psychosis, that somehow they are blind to this. If you look at the Vedic model of chakras, it could be said that they tend to exist in a state that acts below their heart. Therefore, they're not talking about being heart-centered. They can try to mimic this, but in truth, there is a battling of egos that occurs in this, what we call the third chakra. So, this is trying to tie up my research and my understanding of consciousness, a consciousness that is not derived or created by the brain, but is actually something that we exist within, that we filter effectively when we're not overthinking, when we're away from fear. And therefore this is another way that the psychopath will try to affect this nurturing cycle, unknowingly, but for personal, basic, primitive gains, by criticism of the person, by attacking the person in a way that that person will be fearful and uncomfortable. Quite the opposite state of being able to easily transmit this field of consciousness. So when one is in a state of anger, when one is prey to the predator, in other words, in a state of being pursued in fear, then it is particularly difficult for this to occur. However, by joining together, like we're doing, we can help understand this situation. And those who have been prey, by joining together, can join together and start impacting this field of consciousness with support for others, which is heart-centered. And this will not only help us, it will help the field of consciousness. And therefore, the psychopath can be seen, in this case, as being a catalyst for the growth of light, a growth of peace. And that's how I'm beginning to see it. But it does depend on us joining together, the 95+% of people who are not the attackers, who are not the belittlers, the liars, the gaslighters. Joining together and making sure, first of all, we're all safe, and secondly, that these people who do not contribute in a positive way to this field of consciousness, that these people are not allowed to thrive. We have work to do. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you later. Bye.